Um, I think it was several years ago, I was on YouTube and I was watching one of Perry Stone's videos, and I think I uploaded a video to respond to one of his videos, and I think I asked that he or somebody else would tell me what he talked about on one of his programs, or two of his programs I saw it, if I remember right, about the tabernacle, how the furniture of the tabernacle can be placed on a map of the United States with a rectangle around it. The rectangle around the furniture of the tabernacle representing, of course, the outer court, and where each piece would go and all that stuff, because I couldn't remember where one of the pieces went. Well, I've read his book, Nightmare. I'm in the process of reading it, and my dad has helped me read it some, and we read that his latest book, Nightmare on Pennsylvania Avenue, and in part of that book he talks about that. The only problem is he doesn't mention that scripture that he mentioned on one of his TV programs where it says, "I will tabernacle among them." We've not been able to find that verse. I don't know if he's using that from quoting that from a different translation or what, but whether there's a verse in the Bible that says that or not, what he said makes sense to me, because he talked about, America being the leading Gentile nation and fairly close to the end of time, and how God has used America, to be God's new vineyard, and that kind of thing. So what he says makes sense to me about how the tabernacle fits in there, and I think it's really powerful. So I think the significance or importance of it is that just God has used America to be a spiritual tabernacle, and he's just kind of illustrates that with God has kind of illustrated that by showing Perry Stone's how that you can set up the pieces of the tabernacle in the different spots on America, and it fit and makes sense. So I'm going to share that whole thing with you. He said, and the reason I went into all that explanation of all that is that my dad said he really couldn't see any significance, what importance that has, but I think I've explained it, the best I can see why it could be important. Perry Stone said that brazen laver would go, I think that's the first piece of furniture in the tabernacle. It's either the brazen laver or the brazen altar is the first piece of furniture. But anyway, I'll start off with the laver. The brazen laver, he said, would go in the place where where the Mississippi River starts. And he said, that makes sense because, the laver is where they put water in, to wash their hands and their feet. So that's where the, Mississippi River is water. So he said that's where that would start. And he's got a picture of this in that book, Nightmare on Pennsylvania Avenue. He's got an actual picture of where those things would go on a map of the United States. But I'm legally blind, and so I'd rather have a big map and do it myself if I could do it one day. But you might want to look that up. You might want to buy that book. I'm pretty sure it's in Christian bookstores. You might want to buy it and check it out yourself. Anyway, the brazen laver goes where the Mississippi River starts. Then he said the brazen altar goes where the in somewhere around close to North Carolina and in the Tennessee area. And he said there was a move of God that started in the Church of God. And he said that's what, around Tennessee and North Carolina, around in that section somewhere. So he said that's where the brazen laver would go, in that section, in that area. And he said that the table of showbread would go in the breadbasket of America, which is somewhere in the West, I think he said. It's not actually the Midwest. He didn't say it was the actual Midwest in the book, but it's somewhere in the west of the United States is the breadbasket of America, and he talked about how that bread and other things are grown there. And so he said that's where the table of where the table of showbread would go. And he said the golden lampstand would go in the in the Texas and in that area because of the oil that's there. I think that's where he said oil was discovered. So he said that's where the oil was discovered in the United States. So that's where the brazen lampstand would go. Then he said here's what I couldn't ever remember, but he said the golden altar would go in Colorado, in that area, because of coal. He said coal was used to burn. Coal was used on the golden altar. Or, no, he said incense and other things were used there, but well, I don't know if he said coal was or not. But anyway, that's what he, something to do with a red fire, or some of the incense were red or something. I don't know, had a red look to it, but anyway, he said that the golden altar would go in the area of Colorado because of, that's where coal was discovered, he said. So that's where he said, since coal burns, it can be used for fire, it burns, he said that's where the golden altar of incense would go, and that's why it would go there. And he said the holy of not the holy of holies, but the veil that separates the holy of holies, that goes into the holy of holies, he said that veil that goes into those holy of holies, when you pull it, when it was opened, he said that veil would go in the Continental Divide, and that's an imaginary line, that runs around California. He said that's where the holy of holies would, the veil would go. And then he said the holy of holies would go in California. That would be where California would be. That's where the Ark of the Covenant would go. And he said the reason for that is because the California gold rush happened in California, and the altar, the Ark of the Covenant, although it was not made with gold, it was overlaid with gold. So he said that's why the Ark of the Covenant and the Holy of Holies would be in California.